There's a whole category of clickbait about celebrities before they were famous and the goofy projects they were involved in. In the music world, there's nothing more bewildering than the Mynah Birds, a Canadian rock band from the mid-60s that was fronted by a then unknown Rick James and Neil Young. That's right, the folk rock legend Neil Young and super freak Rick James spent a year recording and performing together as the Mynah Birds, until it all came to a dramatic end in 1966. What makes this story so crazy is not just the different career paths they took later on.
I didn't know Neil Young was such a beloved white figure. I'm Rick James, bitch!
Or the fact that the band also included future members of Steppenwolf and Buffalo Springfield. But what this story reveals about being a no-name rock band in the mid-60s, when everyone was searching for the next Beatles, and something as little as a draft letter in the mail could ruin your career. The story begins with exactly that. In the early 1960s in Buffalo, New York, a teenage Rick James, then going by his birth name, James Johnson, was struggling in high school and serving one of his few stints in jail for petty crimes. Fearing that he might soon be conscripted to the military, he joined the Navy Reserves under the belief that he'd remain on domestic duty. However, as luck would have it, James did in fact get assigned to Vietnam. Rather than show up on the boat, James did what about 30,000 other young American men did at this time. He hopped the river to Canada and became a fugitive. Meanwhile, a teenage Neil Young was trying to get his start in and around Thunder Bay, Ontario. After a particularly rough stretch where his band, the Squires, were shacked up in the YMCA, unable to make enough money to live anywhere else, Young decided to try his luck in Toronto, where his father was living at the time. Toronto is also where James Johnson, now going by Rick James, had been living for 2 years now, embedding himself in the music scene. The city was knee-deep in the British invasion, and everything rock, R&B, and blues was in. As James explained in his autobiography, I was an authentic R&B scener, living in a city where white musicians were striving to play authentic R&B. That added to my status. It also got me laid. His band, the Mynah Birds, had a small record deal with Columbia. To stir up some press, their manager had a group of young women chase the band as they tried to shop in a downtown department store. As James described, they screamed our name and tore off our clothes as we ran to the safety of our rented limo. The next day, the Mynah Birds were all over the papers. The band, however, needed a new lead guitarist, and Neil Young arrived in town just in time.
When Neil came into the group, I had a concept for soul music to be like R&B with acoustic guitars, and I ran into Neil, and he's playing in a coffee house, and I said, wow, that's perfect.
The rest of the lineup was pretty fluid, although Bruce Palmer, Goldy McJohn, and Nick St. Nicholas all made contributions around this time. And luck would strike again. Soon after, a wealthy young fan, Morley Shellman, would see them live and become their manager. With him came thousands of dollars of new equipment and a rehearsal space in his mansion. He also landed them an audition with Motown Records, who were looking to capitalize on the British invasion by signing a new rock band. For the Mynah Birds, it was a dream come true, but they also had to act fast. Neil moved in with James in a basement apartment, and the two began writing songs together, including It's My Time. It's my time.
He wanted to be bigger than Dylan. I wanted to be, it came to a point, I wanted to be bigger than Sly Stone.
He dreamed about being the next Mick Jagger when I knew him.
According to Neil Young in his autobiography, this was also the first time he began trying amphetamines and smoking hash. Looking back, I could have gone a lot deeper, he wrote. Luckily, I didn't get too far in the stronger drugs. Others in the gang would not be quite as fortunate, but we'll get more into that later. The other issue facing the band was that Rick James was still a wanted man in the United States, and Motown Records was located across the border in Detroit. The band didn't know he was a fugitive either, although he did eventually confide in their manager, Morley Shellman. Shellman, however, was unconcerned, reassuring James that he'd get the papers he would need to see them through. The band did make it to Detroit without issue, and Motown was impressed enough to offer them a 6-year contract with a cash advance. The band was elated and soon found themselves hanging with the likes of Marvin Gaye, Stevie Wonder, Smokey Robinson, and the Four Tops, the latter of which would add backing vocals to their record. The sessions were going great. The band was sent to choreography school and fitted for new outfits. All was set to make the Mynah Birds Motown's big push into rock and roll. However, there was one thing bugging the band. None of them had seen any of the advance money, and their manager was giving them the runaround. One day, while taking a break from recording, James was back in Canada and hanging at their manager Morley Shellman's house. James noticed that he had a brand new motorcycle, and this led to an altercation about the advance money that got physical. Or put another way, James kicked his ass. Just a day later, however, James got a call informing him that the Mynah Birds were being dropped from Motown. Shellman had ratted him out, and word spread quickly to other recording companies. Realizing he had no other options, James came back to the US and turned himself into the authorities. To make matters even worse, Shellman would soon overdose on heroin, confirming the band's suspicions that he had indeed taken all of their advance money and spent it. With no cash, no manager, and no record deal, Neil Young and Bruce Palmer headed to LA, where they'd soon form a band called Buffalo Springfield.
Bruce and I came to Los Angeles in an old hearse to start, to try to, make stars, We're going to be stars. We're going to be stars.